Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Chapter 4 Shloka 1.
Shri Bhagavanuvach imam vivasvate yogam proktavarnaham vyayam vivasvanmanave prah manurikshvakave bravit.
Supreme Lord Shree Krishna said, I taught this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god Vivasvan, who in turn passed it on to his son Manu, and Manu in turn instructed it to his son Ikshvaku, who was the first king of the solar dynasty. Shloka 2.
Evam parampara praptamimam rajarshyo vidu sakale neha mehta yogo nasht parantap.
O Parantapa Arjun, this yoga was passed on from one generation to the next, and the saintly kings thus received the science of yoga in a continuous tradition. But with a long lapse of time, it was lost to the world. Shloka 3.
Sa evayam maya te diya yoga prokta puratanah bhakto sime sakha cheti rahasham hetad uttamam.
Today I am revealing unto you the same ancient knowledge of yoga, which is indeed the supreme secret, because you are my friend and my devotee, who can understand this transcendental wisdom. Shloka 4.
Arjunuvacha अपरम भवतो जन्म परम जन्म विवस्वतः कथमेतद् विजानीयाम त्वमादौ प्रोक्तवानिति.
Arjuna said to Sri Krishna, you were born much after the sun god Vivasvan. How am I to understand that in the beginning you taught this science to him? Shloka 5.
Shri Bhagavanuvāca bahuni me vyatitani janmani tav charjuna tanyaham ved sarvani na tvam ved parantapa.
The Supreme Lord Shree Krishna said, both you and I have had many births, O Arjuna. You have forgotten them, while I remember them all, O scorcher of foes. Shloka 6.
Ajopi sannavyayatma bhutanamishwaropi san prakritim swamdishthaya sambhavamyatma mayaya.
Although I am unborn, the Lord of all living beings, and have an imperishable and transcendental nature, yet I appear in this world by virtue of my divine power, Yogmaya. Shloka 7.
यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानम धर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम्.
Whenever there is a decline in righteousness or dharma, and a predominance of unrighteousness or adharma, O descendant of Bharata, at that time I manifest myself on earth. Shloka 8.
परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे.
For the protection of the good or the righteous and the destruction of the wicked, I manifest myself on this earth age after age to re-establish the principles of righteousness or dharma. Shloka 9.
जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यमेवं यो वेत्ति तत्त्वतः त्यक्त्वा देहं पुनर्जन्म नैति मामेति सोऽर्जुन.
O Arjuna, those who understand the divine nature of my appearance and activities in essence, upon leaving this material body, they do not have to take birth again. They attain moksha and come to my eternal abode. Shloka 10.
वीतराग भय क्रोध मन्मया मामुपाश्रिता बहवो ज्ञान तपसा पूता मद्भावमागता.
Being freed from attachment, fear and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me, many in the past became purified by knowledge, and they attained transcendental love for me. Shloka 11.
ये यथा मां प्रपद्यन्ते तांस्तथैव भजाम्यहं मम वर्तमानुवर्तन्ते मनुष्या पार्थ सर्वशः.
The Supreme Lord Shree Krishna said, "In whatever way people surrender unto me, I reciprocate to each of them accordingly. O son of Pritha, knowingly or unknowingly, everyone follows my path." Shloka 12.
कांक्षणताः कर्मणां सिद्धिं यजन्ताः इह देवता क्षिप्रं हि मानुष्ये लोके सिद्धिर्भवति कर्मजा.
Those in this world who desire success and rewards from fruitive activities worship the devatas or the demigods, because in this material world rewards from fruitive work is obtained quickly. Shloka 13.
चातुर्वर्ण्यं मया सृष्टं गुणकर्म विभागश तस्य कर्तारमपि मां विद्य कर्तारं व्ययम्.
The four categories of occupations, that is the Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras, were created by me according to people's qualities, activities and aptitude, or their gunas and karma. Although I am the creator of this system, know me to be the non-doer and eternal. Shloka 14.
न मां कर्माणि लिम्पन्ति न मे कर्मफले स्पृहा इति मां योऽभिजानाति कर्मभिर्न स बध्यते.
There is no activity that affects me ever, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who realizes this truth about me is never bound by karma or the fruits of action. Shloka 15.
एवं ध्यात्वा कृतं कर्म पूर्वैरपि मुमुक्षुभिः कुरु कर्मैव तस्मात्त्वं पूर्वै पूर्वतरं कृतम्.
All the seekers of liberation in ancient times acted with this understanding and attained liberation. Therefore, you should also perform your duty without any selfish desires. Shloka 16.
किं कर्मेति कवयोऽप्यत्र मोहिता तत्ते कर्म प्रवक्ष्यामि यज्ञात्वा मोक्ष्यसे शुभात्.
What is action and what is inaction? It confuses even the wise or the jnani to determine this. Now I shall explain to you the nature of action and inaction, by knowing which you will be liberated from material bondage. Shloka 17.
कर्मणो ह्यपि बोद्धव्यं बोद्धव्यं च विकर्मण अकर्मणश्च बोद्धव्यं गहना कर्मणो गति.
Sri Krishna said, there are three kinds of actions, and you must understand the nature of all three. Karma, that is the actions that are recommended by the scriptures to help purify the mind. Vikarma, that is actions that are not beneficial and are not recommended by the scriptures. And akarma, actions that are done without attachment to the results and are done solely for the satisfaction of God. The truth about These is profound and difficult to understand. Shloka 18.
कर्मण्य कर्म य पश्चेद कर्मणि च कर्म य स बुद्धिमान मनुष्येषु संयुक्त कृत्स्न कर्म कृत.
Those who see action in inaction and inaction in action are truly wise amongst humans. Although performing all kinds of actions, they are yogis and masters of all their actions. It means a self-realized person knows that all actions are carried out by the three gunas of Prakriti through the body-mind mechanism, and there is no activity at all in the Atman, which is our real self. A wise person sees inaction in action here. On the other hand, a mundane person, while sitting quietly or in meditation, thinks he is inactive, but his mind is full of activities in the form of various thoughts going on in his mind. And a wise person sees action in inaction here. Shloka 19.
यस्य सर्वे समारंभा काम संकल्प वर्जिता ज्ञानाग्निदग्ध कर्माणं तमाहु पंडितम बुद्धा.
He whose every undertaking is free from the desire for gratification of the senses and selfish motives, and who has burnt the reactions of karma in the fire of divine knowledge or jnana, is called a pandit or sage by the wise. Shloka 20.
त्यक्त्वा कर्मफलासंगं नित्यतृप्तो निराश्रय कर्मण्यभिप्रवृत्तोऽपि नैव किंचित् करोति स.
He who has given up attachment to the fruits of work is always content in the self and is not dependent on anything or anyone externally for happiness. Despite being engaged in intense activities, he actually does nothing, and therefore the law of karma is never applicable to him. Shloka 21.
निराशीर्यत चित्तात्मा त्यक्त सर्व परिग्रह शारीरम केवलम कर्म कुर्वन्नाप्नोति किल्बिषम्.
He who is free from expectations and the sense of ownership, abandons all possessions, has his mind and intellect fully controlled, incurs no sin or karma phala, even though performing actions through his body. Shloka 22.
यदृच्छालाभसन्तुष्टो द्वन्द्वातीतो विमात्सारः समः सिद्धावसिद्धौ च कृत्वापि न निबध्यते.
A person who is content with whatever gain comes of its own accord, who is free from envy and malice, who is beyond the dualities of life, that is even-minded in both happiness and misery, heat and cold, etc. He who is steady in success and failure, even while performing all kinds of activities, he is not bound by his actions. Shloka 23.
कत्संगस्य मुक्तस्य ज्ञानावस्थित चेतासा यज्ञचारता कर्म समग्रम प्रविलीयते.
A person who is liberated from the bondage of material attachments, whose intellect is established in divine knowledge or jnana, and performs all actions as a yajna or sacrifice to God, such a person is freed from the bondage of all karmic reactions. Shloka 24.
ब्रह्मार्पणं ब्रह्म हविर्ब्रह्माग्नो ब्रह्मणाहुतं ब्रह्मैवा तेना गन्तव्यं ब्रह्म कर्म समाधिना.
An enlightened person who is completely absorbed in God consciousness sees everything as Brahman. He sees the offerings to God, for example the ghee, as Brahman, the wooden spoon or the ladle with which it is offered as Brahman, the act of offering as Brahman, and the sacrificial fire also as Brahman. Such persons who see everything as Brahman or God easily attain him. Shloka 25.
दैवमेवा परे यज्ञं योगिन पर्युपासते ब्रह्माज्ञावपरे यज्ञं यज्ञेनैवोपजुह्वति.
Some yogis worship the celestial gods or the devatas and make material offerings unto them. There are some others who offer the self as sacrifice in the fire of the Supreme Truth or the Brahman. Shloka 26.
श्रोत्रादीनिन्द्रियाण्यन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुह्वति शब्दादीन् विषयानन्य इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुह्वति.
Some again offer the five senses, hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting and touching, as sacrifice in the fire of restraint by controlling the mind, while others offer the object of senses as sacrifice in the fire of the senses. For example, sound in the fire of hearing, fragrance in the fire of smelling, food in the fire of tasting, and so on. Shloka 27.
सर्वाणि इन्द्रियकर्माणि प्राणकर्माणि चापरे आत्मसंयमयोगाग्नो जुह्वति ज्ञानदीपिते.
Other yogis offer all the functions of the senses and the functions of the vital force or prana as oblations into the fire of self-control, enlightened by knowledge or jnana. Shloka 28.
द्रव्ययज्ञास्तपो यज्ञ योगियज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञाश्च यतय संशितव्रता.
Some give away their wealth as sacrifice in the form of donations and gifts, while others offer severe austerities as sacrifice. Some practice the eightfold path of yogic practices, and yet others observe strict vows and study the scriptures and cultivate knowledge as sacrifice. Shloka 29.
अपाने जुह्वति प्राणं प्राणे पाणं तथा परे प्राणापानगति रुद्ध्वा प्राणायामपरायणा.
Other yogis offer as sacrifice the outgoing breath in the incoming and the incoming breath in the outgoing, or restrain both the outgoing and incoming breaths and get solely absorbed in the restraint of breath. Shloka 30.
अपरे नियताहारा प्राणान् प्राणेषु जुह्वति सर्वेप्येते यज्ञविदो यज्ञक्षपितकल्मषा.
Yet others cut down their food intake and offer their breath into the vital life energy as sacrifice. All these knowers of sacrifice are cleansed of their impurities and sins as a result of such performances. Shloka 31.
यज्ञशिष्टामृतभुजो यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनं नायं लोकोऽस्त्य यज्ञस्य कुतोऽन्य कुरु सत्तम.
The Supreme Lord Shree Krishna said to Arjuna, O best of the Kurus, those who perform sacrifices and partake of its remnants or prasada, which is like nectar, advance towards the absolute truth. But those who perform no sacrifice find no happiness either in this world or the next. Shloka 32.
एवं बहुविधा यज्ञा वित्तता ब्रह्मणो मुख्ये कर्मजान् विद्धि तान् सर्वाणेवं ध्यात्वा विमोक्ष्यसे.
All these different kinds of sacrifice have been described in the Vedas. Know them to be born out of different types of work or action. This understanding cuts the knots of material bondage and leads to attainment of liberation or moksha. Shloka 33.
श्रेयान्द्रव्यमयाद्यज्ञाज्ञानयज्ञ परन्तपा सर्वं कर्माखिलं पार्थ ज्ञाने परिसमाप्यते.
O scorcher of foes, the sacrifice of knowledge or jnana yajna is higher than the sacrifice of material possessions or dravya yajna. O Partha, after all, in entirety, the sacrifice of work or action finds fulfillment in knowledge or jnana. Shloka 34.
तद्विद्धि प्रणिपातेन परिप्रश्नेन सेवया उपदेक्ष्यन्ति ते ज्ञानं ज्ञानिनस्तत्त्वदर्शिनः.
Learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Prostrate before him, question him with reverence, and render service unto him. An enlightened saint can impart knowledge or jnana unto you because he has seen the truth. Shloka 35.
यज्ञात्वा न पुनर्मोहमेवं यास्यसि पाण्डवा येन भूतान्यशेषेण द्रक्ष्यस्यात्मन्यथो मयि.
The Supreme Lord Shree Krishna said, O Arjuna, following this path and having achieved enlightenment from a spiritual master, you will not be deluded again. In the light of that knowledge, you will see that all beings are parts of the Supreme and they are all within me. Shloka 36.
अपि चेदसि पापेभ्यः सर्वेभ्यः पापकृत्तमा सर्वं ज्ञानप्लवेनैव वृजिनं सन्तरिष्यसि.
Even those who are considered the most sinful amongst all sinners can cross over this ocean of material existence, which is full of misery, by placing themselves in the boat of transcendental knowledge or jnana. Shloka 37.
यथैधांसि समिद्धोऽग्निर्भस्मसात् कृते अर्जुन ज्ञानाग्नि सर्वकर्माणि भस्मसात् कृते तथा.
As a blazing fire reduces wood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge or jnana burn to ashes all karmic reactions from material activities. Shloka 38.
न हि ज्ञानेन सदृशं पवित्रमिह विद्यते तत्स्वयं योगसंसिद्धः कालेनात्मनि विन्दति.
Indeed, there is nothing as purifying as divine knowledge or jnana in this world. One who has attained purity of mind through prolonged practice of yoga receives such knowledge within the self in due course of time. Shloka 39.
श्रद्धावान् लभते ज्ञानं तत्पर संयतेन्द्रिय ज्ञानं लब्ध्वा परां शान्तिमचिरेणाधिगच्छति.
A person whose faith is deep and who has controlled his mind and senses attain divine knowledge or jnana. Through such transcendental knowledge, he attains everlasting peace or param shanti very soon. This is because he attains enlightenment and is freed from the bondage of the material world. Shloka 40.
अज्ञश्चाश्रद्दधानश्च संशयात्मा विनश्यति नायं लोकोऽस्ति न परो न सुखं संशयात्मनः.
A person who has neither faith in the scriptures nor knowledge or jnana, and who is of a doubting nature, suffers a downfall and is ruined. A skeptical soul attains no happiness either in this world or the next. Shloka 41.
योगसन्न्यस्तकर्माणं ज्ञानसञ्छिन्नसंशयम् आत्मवन्तं न कर्माणि निबध्नन्ति धनञ्जय.
Sri Krishna addresses Arjuna as Dhananjaya, which means conqueror of wealth, and said, actions can never bind a person who has renounced the fruits of karma in the fire of yoga or sacrifice, whose doubts have been cleared by knowledge or jnana, and who is firmly established in the self. Shloka 42.
तस्मादज्ञानसम्भूतं हृत्स्थं ज्ञानासीनात्मना चित्त्वैनं संशयं योगमातिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ भारत.
Therefore, with the sword of transcendental knowledge or jnana, cut into pieces the doubts that have arisen in your heart out of ignorance. O descendant of Bharata, establish yourself in yoga. Arise and take action. Jai Shri Krishna.